Hey, Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified YouTube channel. And today I want to talk about some of the legal and tax implications of running a Kickstarter campaign. I gotta put an asterisk on this video saying that I am not an accountant, I'm not a lawyer. Make sure you consult both of these, and that this is really my opinion, right? I just kind of an asterisk for this video, but I want to share some of my own thoughts and personal revelations when it comes to this particular subject, as well as setting up a foundational business organizational structure for your company if you're planning to do e-commerce and you're planning to go the Kickstarter route. Coming up right after this. All right, so when it comes to this, why am I making a video on this? Because I think that this is something that's just so undereducated about, and I had a lot of struggles with my own business, right? Getting set up when I was 20, 21 years old, and it was just like so in the dark, right? No one really talks about these things. Everyone's afraid to talk about it. Let's be honest, everyone is afraid to talk about this, and I think it's really important. I think it's something that you're an adult, you deserve to get the truth, and you deserve to be able to make informed decisions. If you are a business owner and if you're an e-commerce store owner, you're trying to bring a new product into the world or a tabletop game of some kind, you deserve it, right? So first of all, let's talk a little bit about legality, right? So first of all, I really recommend, if you can, as a business owner, setting up an entity of some kind that is separate from your own personal, your own person when it comes to this, because it's really about liability, right? So first of all, you could be, I'm just talking about the United States, by the way, I'm just talking about the United States because that's what I know, right? You could be a sole proprietor, you could have a LLC, you could have an S corporation, you could have a C corporation. Usually LLC is probably going to be the easiest depending on where you are, but I recommend having an S corporation, LLC, or a C corporation if you want to get really intense, right? Because you got to take like corporate minutes, and you have double taxation with corporate taxes versus distributions to the shareholders. So you would have double taxation, but LLC is usually probably easy. You might have a multi-member LLC or a single member LLC when you get started. Why would you want to have this? Well, what happens if you come out with an exercise product, or you come out with a new product and someone tries it and they end up injuring themselves? And they're like, what? There was no package insert. There was no one who told me not to do this stupid thing right, with this product, because people, come up with dumb ideas, or they're drunk, or they do something, right? So by having an LLC, you separate your assets with the company from your personal assets. So if someone has to sue the LLC, as the LLC is actually the one who is the business, that means that there's a little bit of protection between you and the company. Now you have to obviously look and consult with a lawyer to get this fully fleshed out, but I'm just kind of providing my thoughts here. Same thing if you're entering into contracts and agreements, right? So if you're entering into a contract as an organization, that agreement is binding for that organization, versus for you as an individual, that company can't go after you very as easily if it's just, if there's a separation there involved. So by having a separate entity, it makes you shield yourself from a little bit of liability and a little bit of potential issues that just might crop up if you deal with crazy people all the time, or if something happens in the way of business. You're not going to have your personal assets at stake in a lawsuit of some kind, or it's just going to make it a lot easier, I think, honestly, in the future if you're decoupling these two. The other important thing is for you to set up a business bank account, if you can, that is tied to your LLC or that's tied to the corporation in some way, in order to what's called establish a corporate veil. So for example, if you have an LLC and you are dipping into the LLC to pay for personal stuff, and there's intermixing of personal expenses and business expenses, it's going to be harder to talk with the IRS and to really make sure that they understand that you are a separate person from this actual entity. If you have a separate LLC, a separate bank account, an EIN number, you keep everything separate, very clearly, it's going to be a lot easier for you to make sure and to establish that corporate veil. And if you ever went into a lawsuit, potentially, you're probably going to have a lot better protection than if things were intermingled, and then it's much more ambiguous, right? So just because you have an LLC doesn't mean necessarily you're guaranteed protection. It's really how you've done your reporting and how you've structured these things. So that being said, another important thing to be aware of is the way in which you structure your company and your corporation, right? So I'm going beyond just the legal framework of structuring it, but really thinking about how is it that you want to set up the organization? So thinking about the organizational chart. Now I know this is kind of early to think about. You might not even want to think about this if you're just trying to get something out there, but I'm really making this video for the people that do want to think about this, right? So the organizational chart. Usually a business has a CEO, it's going to have different departments. So you might have a marketing and sales department. You might have an accounting department. You might have, it might be tied to the finance department. You might then have human resources. You might have operations, right? There are a lot of different little departments which if you can begin to flesh this out, and I just kind of do this initially with Google Drive, right? And you can use Basecamp or a project management tool like that. It's going to help you later on, because what this is, creating an organizational chart, is going to enable you to do is you can then hire for specific roles, right? So let's just say you have your core organization, you have the CEO, and then maybe just for easy sake, you have like project manager, you have a director of operations, you have the marketing person. So for a specific project, this initial crowdfunding campaign, this Kickstarter campaign, you might have someone who's in charge of the marketing, which you hire out or which you have internally, right? Or you have a project manager that's helping you with the timeline and all that kind of stuff. And maybe you have one person then that's hired underneath that, under the marketing department, who's going to help you with customer service, who's going to help you with this other thing or this other thing, right? In operations. So by thinking a bit about the organizational chart, it allows you to identify the skill sets you need to hire for, the teammates that you need. If you're having marketing, you need someone on graphic design, right? Or you need someone doing this or doing that. And you also, can be aware of the different hats that you are playing as a business owner. You as a business owner, you're taking the hat of CEO, maybe you're taking the hat of customer service, maybe you're also playing the role of marketing. When you're just getting started with a company, you're usually playing a lot of different roles and wearing a lot of different hats. And this is important because the more you're aware of the roles that you're doing, the more eventually you can hire for those roles. And also, when you're thinking about the organization of the company, let's just say that you want to pay yourself, we'll just say it's a really modest salary, a $50,000 a year salary. Now, obviously, you probably want to make more than that. But we're just going to say that to get started. That means that based on the revenue of the business, let's just say you make $500,000 in sales, right? And of those sales, you have a operating profit margin, not including the owner's salary, of let's just say like 40% if you're really good. So if I did the math correctly, let's just say operating profit, not including the owner's salary, is $200,000. If you have a 500K revenue business and you are operating profit of 40%, that would be 200K. Now let's just say that we take the owner's salary out of that. So then you have 150K in net profit, it's called. So if you think of accounting, right, you have the profit from the actual sale, gross profit, the sale of the product, and the cost that went into that. You have operating profit, which are the human resources and all that other stuff included. You have net profit, which is the profit after all of that, essentially. And then you can talk about like taxes. I'm not going to even cover that in that video. That's like way too extensive. But we'll just say that at the end of the day, you're left with a net profit of $150,000, right? So that means that you have that amount of money to plow back into the company, to plow back into advertising, and you are being able to pay yourself as an employee of the business $50,000. Now you could probably pay yourself more based on the net profit there, right? You could probably pay yourself close to 100K if you wanted to, but then you're taking money out of the company, which could be used to fuel the operations of the company. So learning a little bit about accounting would actually be super helpful for you. I know it's not the greatest and the most fun subject to actually touch on, but when it comes to structuring your organization, this is really the financial model where you can understand if it makes sense. Now let's just take a different example. Let's just say that you did the $500,000 in sales and you have an operating profit, not including the owner's salary, of 10%. So 10% of 500,000 is $50,000. Your operating profit, not including owner's salary, is 50K. So if you paid out the owner's salary right now at this point in time, you would have a 0% net profit, right? Now that means there's no more money to grow the company. You can't invest back in marketing, you can't invest back in R&D, you can't invest in anything. So at that point in time, you're probably not gonna wanna take an owner salary because it's gonna stifle the growth of the company. You see what I'm getting here with company organization. But let's just say that instead you have $1 million company, right? You have $1 million in revenue business and you have that same margin, we'll just say of 10%. So you then have $100,000 left over at the end of the year. You can pay yourself $50K and you still then have $50K to be able to reinvest in the company into growing that actual organization, whether that's hiring people, marketing, etc. So that just clues you a little bit into thinking a little bit about the organization, because that's going to dictate how quickly the company can grow over time. The higher the operating profit margin, the more money you have to work with to be able to grow, to reinvest, and eventually to pay yourself as the owner of the business. As it relates to Kickstarter, the revenue which you get on Kickstarter is considered revenue. Unless someone is giving, let's just say $100 and they're receiving like a mug, where there's a high discrepancy between the amount pledged and the amount that's collected, it's going to be considered revenue basically for the business. So it's basically pre-orders essentially. And when you receive that money, that is revenue for the company, which means you need to keep track of the expenses for the company. Now, where this gets a little bit sticky sometimes is, let's just say it's the end of the year, it's December, you have collected, your Kickstarter campaign ends, let's just say at the end of December, you now have $200,000 in revenue, but you didn't keep track of the expenses because you have to still ship out the product. So now all of a sudden you have to pay taxes on the revenue, right? So there's a little bit, gets a little bit granular here with when did you collect the revenue and when were the expenses cataloged in the business, right? And you maybe want to talk with an accountant to understand that a little bit better of revenue, expenses, profit, taxable income, right? Because let's just say I'm just gonna throw this out there, you're a single member LLC. Let's just say it's August, you close off your Kickstarter campaign, you end up shipping out the products by September or thereabouts, October, right? August, September, October, November, we'll say November, you end up shipping out the products, everyone gets them, that's the end of the process, right? So you've collected $200,000 in revenue in August, you then ship out the products and you have all your expenses cataloged. You then, let's just say, have a net profit. We'll just also say that doesn't include the owner salary of $100,000, or I guess if it's 200K, probably closer to like 50K or something like that, 200 or 25K. You then have to pay taxes on that amount of money, and that's going to depend on your taxable bracket, your income, where you fit in, which country you're in, etc. Right? So this is something to think about, and this is something to kind of, if you can, break out the Excel spreadsheet and develop a financial model for this, or you can book a coaching call with me and we can kind of go through this a little bit more granularly for your specific case. Now, aside from that, we talked about Kickstarter and the taxes. What about the legality, right? So the legality component of running a Kickstarter is that you basically are promising to fulfill the pre-orders and the rewards if the funding goal is hit, and you're going to do everything in your power in order to do that. If you do not do that, and let's just say you scam people and you take the money, they could technically sue you. They could do a class action lawsuit. They could get together and they could sue you for failure to deliver those goods. I've seen that happen before. It is possible to do that. Is it likely? It depends. It depends on the degree to which you made efforts essentially to do this. So if you tried everything, you tried to make the people get their products, and you just went out of business, right? You, for whatever reason, couldn't deal with the costs and you had to close the company, that's okay. They might try to sue you, but if you have an LLC and you declare bankruptcy, or you have your corporation declare bankruptcy and you close down that corporation, there's not very much that they can do, obviously, So it's obviously going to hurt your reputation a little bit online, but it's something where, as a business owner, it's normal to take risks. The United States, the way the legal framework is written, the way that the tax structure is that business owners should not be punished for taking risks, essentially, and they should be rewarded for reinvesting in their company. So as long as you follow the rules and you have a business failure, that should not set you back personally as an individual, a personal bankruptcy, as opposed to a business bankruptcy, right? So basically, main thing I'm trying to say here is you should 100% try to fulfill your rewards. However, as a business owner, there are some certain ways in which you can protect yourself from that legal blowback, if you will. Now, those are the two things. Like, if you want to tune out from this video because it's super long, right? When it comes to the legal component relating to Kickstarter, you can do that. I'm just going to finish off this video by talking a little bit more about building the structure and the foundation of a company, right? So if you're like Sal, I really want to build a company out of this. I don't just want to like sell one product and that's it, or I don't just want to do this hobby thing. I really want to learn how to structure a company. That is what I want to talk about next. If you are trying to structure a company, you need people. You need teammates. You need people who are fulfilling certain roles. So those roles could be things like a marketing team. Those roles could be things like internally customer service. Those could be roles, for example, like someone to help a project manager, helping you with operations, helping you with finance, the legal department. Now, you don't have to necessarily do this all at once, but these are things that you need to think about, right? So just maybe researching a little bit. Or who, for this stage of the company, is going to fill the marketing department. Maybe we're going to outsource that to someone else, or we're going to hire me, or we're going to have someone else do this, right? So you need to think a little bit about the roles that you need to fill. And success in business really comes down to building a team that can carry out a mission of some kind. If you look at the most successful Kickstarters, they all have teams, right, that are working on this product. Someone who's helping with designing the product, someone who's helping with the engineering, someone who's actually producing and manufacturing it, someone then who's doing quality control, someone who's doing customer service, someone who's doing the marketing of it. The more you can assemble a dream team, I call it a dream team, right? A crowdfunding team, a street team of some kind around this project and around this business, the more successful you will be in the future, because that team, that organization will allow you to do things that you yourself could never do, because you don't have the skill set, because you don't have the intelligence, because you don't have the wherewithal, the knowledge, whatever it is. But you can hire someone who can fill that gap. So a really good business owner is someone who can identify, obviously, the potential for a product, come out with it, get the prototype made, generate some sales and that kind of stuff, obviously. But really good business owners also know how to assemble a team around them and lead that team to a victory of some kind. If you can assemble this team, the sky is the limit, right? Because then you have someone who can deal with customer service while you're thinking about the strategic vision of the company. You can have someone who's marketing and running Facebook ads and making sure that all the branding is on point while you're thinking about the next product that you need to come out with, or you're examining new market opportunities. If your head is always bogged down in the day-to-day operations of the company, you don't have time, emotional energy, or even the cognitive wherewithal to think about the future and to plan and to think about the broader big picture, right? Because you're so focused on the nitty-gritty operations of the business, you're never going to be able to have enough time and actually be able to step back and take a bird's eye view of what you have to do next to get to the next stage with the company. So this is kind of, think of it this way. You have McDonald's, right? So you have an individual McDonald's, and that individual McDonald's is serving up hamburgers or serving up shakes and Coca-Cola, right? Or Pepsi, I guess, if you have another preference. But they're serving up this service, and that service is staffed by a bunch of teenagers and maybe some management that's overseeing them, and they're following a rule book, right? They're following the actual guidelines. Eventually, you want your business to be like that. You want your business to have rules, checklists, guidelines. You want to have the operational people. You want to have the management that's managing those operations, and you want to be in a separate office, kind of like almost the McDonald's corporation. And the McDonald's corporation spends their time not just thinking about the operations of one store, right? They're spending their time thinking about real estate. They're spending time thinking about the franchisees. They're spending time thinking about the direction of the company, much more high level kind of things and much more high level thinking. So the more that you can, initially you got to get started, you got to work in the business. You got to be grinding, you got to be flipping hamburgers, right? You got to be doing management. If you're hiring other people, managing them, overseeing them, you got to do that. You got to run a successful McDonald's store. But your long-term success with e-commerce, with Kickstarter, with your business that you're trying to create comes down to being able to move yourself, remove yourself, and extricate yourself from the day-to-day operations of the company and to get more into the overall executive, high-level management decisions that are going to move the business forward. So we call this working on the business, not working in the business. And if you can carve out time to be able to do this, the sky is the limit in the future. And likely, if you are looking to launch a Kickstarter campaign, you're looking to come out with a new product, you probably are already in that kind of a mindset of like, I just want to make cool stuff. Yeah, I don't want to do like the whole management stuff. I don't want to figure out customer service. Like, I'm willing to do it, but that's not my strong suit. Likely, that will give you and free up time for you to be able to envision and think of new products and ways to grow the company and engage some of those creative juices, if you will. We don't think of creativity in business usually as being hand in hand, but they actually are. Someone who is very visionary and someone who's thinking about new products and new ways of coming to market and new what's next for the company, you gotta be creative, even if that's drawing inspiration from other sources. So likely, if you are an entrepreneur, you're a creative type, you're a product designer, you're an engineer, you probably are creative already, you just don't realize it, right? So when you extricate yourself from the day-to-day operations, that's when you begin to see a phenomenal level of growth within a company, and your team begins to produce the results that you see in the marketplace. They actually handle the operations of the company, and you, as more of the executive, are the one who's keeping your eye on the actual business, the workings of the business, the financial metrics, how you can grow more, what teammates you need to get there, and that's where you're gonna start to have a real success on your hands. So I haven't made a video like this before. I'm kind of curious of what your thoughts are on this topic. Did you like it? Did you think it was kind of boring? I would love to hear from you down below. Leave a comment down below. Give me a thumbs up if you did like this video. If I didn't fully answer the question, you can always book a one-on-one coaching call with me so we can discuss your individual situation leading up to the launch of a campaign or a new product you're trying to come out. My name is Salvador Briggman, and I will see you next time.